Eccentrics make you slow. So listen, I hate doing this, but I had to write myself notes for this one. And you know me. Like, if you watch my videos, you know how I am. I just turn on the camera and I just go, because that's what I do. I just talk. And I just rant and I ramble and I tell you exactly what it is, and I'm a talker. However, this one deserves some, I don't know, thought. So here's the first off thing. So Chris Beardsley made this post, right? And it's about how slow lowering phases, I'm going to read it to you just so I don't fuck this up. Slow lowering phases are absolutely not the same thing as eccentric overload and probably cause the exact opposite effect in athletes. And then he talks about this study here, right? And so, they did slow lowering tempos, eccentric training. And, this apparently actually makes you slower. So, even though they activated the muscle, it's causing growth of the fibers and all this stuff like that here, it says that, it somehow slow lowering during the normal strength reduces performance in the associated concentric phase, and that there's some type of interference effect of the stretch shortening cycle, right? Okay. So, will doing eccentric training make you slower? And the answer is yes, but here's the thing with this, and this is the part that's really important. I want to explain this to everyone. You need to understand that studies are completely useless in real-world application. In this study, they did eccentric-only training, therefore it made people slower. You don't train like that even when you're doing eccentrics, okay? So this is my notes here. This is one of those things where it matters greatly how it's done, right? And it also matters the level of the athlete. So if you have beginners and intermediate athletes, doing slow eccentrics will make them stronger, not just because of time under tension, but they're going to have to become strong in different positions. So they're going to have to become stronger at parallel. They're going to have to be stronger, slightly above parallel. Like, doing this slow eccentric is making them stronger across the entire duration of the lift, okay? Additionally, if you're a beginner or intermediate, you're just fucking weak in general. So getting stronger at all will make you better at lifting. Okay? This is not true for advanced lifters. Advanced lifters have to work on their sticking point specifically. You know this. But this is no different than, even also the fact of developing technique. Ed Cohn talks about doing a super slow eccentric, as slow as you possibly can. Why? So that you really develop that bar path. That way your technique is just dialed in, so you have this perfectly straight bar path as you're coming down. Yes, Ed Cohn is right. You should listen to Ed Cohn. He might know a few things about squatting. But once you get to the advanced level, okay, now you have to work on things like speed. I think speed work is actually useful for advanced lifters. Do beginners need to be doing speed work? Do they need the dynamic effort day? No, they don't, because they're not strong enough for it to matter. It doesn't become an issue for them. Like, if you can only squat 100 pounds and you weigh 200, like, the very first thing you need to do is get stronger. Just learning how to move 100 pounds faster isn't going to make you better whenever you're squatting half of what you weigh. Now, this is important here as well. If you're squatting 1,000 pounds, there's no such thing as squatting 1,000 pounds slow. Watch them squat 1,000 pounds. They're fast down, fast up, okay? If you go down super slow and you try to do like the super slow eccentric thing, you're not going to come out of the hole very well. Now, fast is a relative term. Okay, this certainly isn't an Olympic weightlifter bouncing their squats where they drop down into the hole and bounce out. But even still, if you watch a power lifter squatting 1,000 pounds, they go down relatively fast considering the fact that they have 1,000 pounds on their back. It's a relative term. I'm not trying to compare, fast. What is fast? Usain Bolt? Yes, Usain Bolt is fast. You performing a squat, it's a different type of fast. But the point being that you're not going to do a super slow eccentric with 1,000 pounds on your back. It's going to force you down, okay? Now, this is the point that we need to pay attention to, though. The study is on this eccentric training, and that's fine. Only the thing is that in real-world application, no one trains like that. This is like the study where people did fasted cardio and fed cardio. No one fucking does fasted cardio like that. Everybody takes caffeine before they do their fasted cardio. I don't know anyone that's like, I do fasted cardio, and I don't take yohimbine and caffeine and whatever the hell else you're taking beforehand. People use stimulants. The stimulants change things. So, I don't know why we are so reliant on studies whenever you read the study and you look at it and you're like, well, we don't actually do that in the real world. So you would never do eccentric only training. In fact, actually, if you had an eccentric block and you said, yeah, I'm going to include some eccentric squats, just listen to what I just said, some eccentric squats. Are you getting rid of all concentric movement? No, you wouldn't. Are you going to exaggerate the concentric on squats and then you're not going to do other movements at full speed? No, you wouldn't do that either, especially not in athletes, right? So, okay, we're going to do a block of eccentric training and they're going to do their squats, with a 5-second eccentric or something, right? So 80% of your 1 rep max. All right, but we're still doing jumps. We're still doing throws, okay? We're still doing sprints. We're still doing other movements at full speed. So it's just my observation here then that this study does not actually match how we train in a weight room. Like we have bounding and skipping and jumping and throwing and all this movement, change of direction drills. Yeah, so we don't train with the same protocol that they use in the study. So this is my point here. Many of these studies are useless to coaches. That they're fine as a mechanism, right? You can do a study and you say, oh, this is the mechanism that's occurring, and that's interesting. And it's no different than like a proof of concept study or something like that. It's interesting, and that's where it ends. It's interesting. Because in real world application, we don't follow those types of protocols. A study is a study. The point of the study is to isolate a variable. So they'll do nothing but isometrics, or they'll do nothing but eccentrics because they're trying to isolate that variable. In the real world, we have athletes training multiple qualities, right? So as I pointed out here, running sprints, doing throws, doing speed work, whether it's whatever it is that you're doing for your sport, you're doing something fast, okay? Even if you're doing a block of isometric work, you're still going to have other movements that are performed at full speed. You're going to run sprints. At least I hope you are. If you're playing a field sport, why are you not sprinting? Everyone knows that sprinting is part of your fucking game. I don't care if it's football, basketball, soccer, baseball, hockey. Sprinting is part of your game. Like, you would keep sprints in. You wouldn't be like, well, I'm going to do eccentric squats and what? You're just going to get rid of all the sprinting and jumping? No, you would never do that. So here's the deal, okay? You do a block of eccentric training. Well, as long as you keep the plyos in, you're doing plyometrics, you're doing sprints, you're doing throws, you're doing all this other stuff, no, you're not going to get slow because that's not how you train. No one trains where they do eccentric only and then we just forget all the other attributes. That's the point. So like if you did eccentric only training and that was all you did, would it make you slower? Yeah. But no one would ever do that. So is eccentric training going to make you slower? No, probably not, because you're still doing throws, you're still doing jumps, you're still doing sprints, you're still doing plyometrics. Like you're still doing things to maintain speed. This is like saying if you only trained, whatever, isometric, you'll lose the eccentric strength and you'll lose the concentric strength or something, right? And it's like, yeah, but we're only doing isometrics on the squat. So, like, we're still doing sprints. Like, you're still maintaining these other qualities. You're just maintaining these other qualities through other means. We're still training max speed. We're just training max speed on sprints, which it's probably a better place for you to be training max speed anyways, instead of doing bands on the barbell for your squats. Like, just think about it that way. I don't know why people get hung up on these studies. These studies are not useful to real-world application. I will never use the protocol in a study with athletes. Athletes need to have other attributes. Like, they're not, oh, look at this study over here. We found that they had more hypertrophy doing, 10 sets of 5. Okay. My athletes aren't bodybuilders. Athletes need other qualities besides hypertrophy. So, like, I'm not going to follow a study that says this is the best way for hypertrophy. My athletes still need to be able to be strong. They need to be fast. They need to be explosive. Like, oh, power cleans aren't ideal for, developing hypertrophy according to this study over here. And it's like, no one does power cleans for hypertrophy. Med ball throws are not ideal for hypertrophy. Yeah, no shit. No one, absolutely no one is doing med ball throws for the purpose of hypertrophy in their athletes. For that matter, you could argue that sprinting is stupid. You shouldn't sprint because it doesn't lead to hypertrophy. And it's like, yeah, but my wide receiver needs to be fast. So, like, he's not a fucking bodybuilder. You don't train your athletes like a bodybuilder. And then similarly, for these studies where it's, this is the best protocol for strength, we had the athletes do one heavy single and then drop to 80% of that heavy single for 3 sets of 3, and that was the best way for them to get stronger. It's like, okay, but my athletes aren't power lifters. My athletes still need to maintain other attributes. My basketball players still need to be able to jump. My baseball players still need to be able to throw. Like, we still need these other attributes. So my point that I want to share with you, and I realize I sound like I'm ranting because I'm always ranting because I'm angry. I'm mad at the whole goddamn world. The point being here, no one trains like the studies. That's not how we do things in the real world. So is the study correct? Yes, the study is correct. If you did nothing but eccentric training, it would probably make you slower. But the truth is, you're never going to do that. Outside of a study where you're trying to isolate a variable, no one is ever going to train like that. And that's the point. That's what you need to take home from this. It's like if I told you that, I don't care, if you only eat broccoli, then this such and such thing happens over here. It's like, yeah, but no one follows a diet where they only eat broccoli. I'm sure there's some idiot out there who's done it, but the rest of the world doesn't do things like that, okay? You have some broccoli and then you eat other foods. I don't know. I don't know why people get so hung up on studies, because you know full well that studies are isolating variables for the purpose of being able to evaluate a variable and compare it to the control group. In the real world, you don't have to choose between the two. You don't have to say, I'm going to do eccentrics only or I'm going to do full speed. You can do both. You don't have to do a study where you do nothing but hip thrusts compared to squats. Why? Because there's no rule in the real world where you have to isolate the variables. You can just do both. I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand why people get hung up on these studies, because you as a coach know full well that's not how you program. So there you go. That's me explaining it as shortly as I can. I realize it doesn't fit into an IG post. This is really long. You probably didn't sit through it, but if you did, hey, thanks for hanging around. And I hope that this was insightful and at least useful, and that you can use this counter argument whenever someone makes a stupid argument to you that eccentrics will make you slow.